Hello, everybody, and welcome back to the Black Tie Affair, another podcast with my wonderful co-host Jake. How are you, buddy?
Oh God, now I gotta be funny. Hang on. Uh, 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 Fuck it. Valentine's Day is shit. So if
Already,
someone's listening to this, they're definitely alone on
right?
Valentine's Day.
Oh
So
no, I
welcome,
bet Oren's not
welcome.
alone, and the Horned Rat is married. Uh, Pubsy has a wonderful girlfriend. A lot of my
Well,
viewers are doing well. I know your viewers are all like massive stoners, but
there's variables in nature, and your viewers are clearly freaks. Um,
they are not, you bastard. They're really sweet people. Baby
I'm
Boom's really
sure.
nice. The Flying Storm Boys has been sending me amazing photos. Just
Hmm.
absolutely amazing. I need to give that guy a fucking medal at some point. In fact, you're going to see that photo right here on the podcast. That's what we're using it for, these backgrounds. So,
Oh, okay. That's
yeah,
that's pretty. That's pretty cool.
I really like it. It's a good way to do things. But anyways, we made up a tiny list for things to talk about, and then we're just going to go on to tangents and stuff. So, Jake, what's your first topic? What do you got for me?
It's a bit of an open-ended question.
All right.
The question is, what will video games look like in 1,000 years?
I personally don't think we'll have video games in 1,000 years, and this is kind of grim, but I do think we'll all be dead. I think.
Okay, well,
Listen to this. Like again, I'm such a Warhammer nerd, and we were just talking about Mass Effect and stuff, but video games can only get to a certain point, right? Like the
hmm
max you can do is just replacement of reality. So if you can touch, feel, eat, and sleep all in a virtual
yeah,
world, it's basically like we've created our own universe, right? And that
sure.
and that means that you know how our universe is like a bubble, so we know that
hmm
we're inside of something else.
Yeah,
It's quite likely, and I'm not, not trying to be grim, but it's quite likely that there's some other being that's playing a video game right now, and we're in that video game.
I think if we're in that video game, this is a Steam Greenlight project that never
No,
took off
no, no, no,
because
no. That's the billionaires and shit, right?
we need an expansion pack or something.
Well, I mean, the expansion pack was World War II, and now they're just waiting for a little while, and soon it's going to be called like the Great War, or no, actually we had that, didn't we? It's going to be called Armageddon. Is the next
I like I
expansion
like the
pack?
idea that North Korea is sort of like the Tropico expansion.
Exactly.
You know?
That's it. Like seriously, those are the guys who are playing the game. Like Kim Jong Un, he put in his 30 pounds at the beginning. He's early access. He's got his name at the end of the credits. He's
Yeah.
fucking all kinds of weird pussy, and everybody's like, "Wow, we're all sentient beings." He's like, "Bitch, no, you ain't. Gonna
But
plug
the
your
thing
shit."
is,
Uh huh.
it occurs to me if you're replacing reality entirely,
Yeah.
like the definition of reality is the thing that doesn't go away if you pretend it isn't there. Like that's what
Exactly.
makes it reality. So we would still die horribly if we just lived our lives inside this other reality.
Would we
Like
though?
we'd
Like,
still need to improve our actual lives in some way.
yeah, I feel like it would be trying to get to that point to escape reality into a different one. So, like, you know how we
Yeah,
all work right now for our social security and stuff? That way, when we get old, we don't have to worry about, having money and stuff when we're
yeah,
crippled. Sorry, guys, I have a bit of a flu. Um, it's probably that way for them. It's like you put in your
mm,
50 years, and then you get your own little cube, and you plug yourself into the cube, and it keeps you alive, and you get to exist for all eternity in a different reality of your choosing.
okay.
And
So
that,
like transhumanism, kind of, you're living eternally in the cloud.
exactly. You just,
Yeah.
yeah, you become like a computer program or something.
Well, I think that's very possible. I mean, I always like to think that there won't be any video games, but only because the technology will bleed into everything else.
That's
So
what
you're,
that's where I was going to talk about Warhammer with this because they do have video games in Warhammer 40,000, but
mm,
they're part of your brain. Like tech
yeah,
priests and things are just so augmented by machines that they can slip in and out of being part of a machine or part of a computer program or something like that. So you can
yeah,
be playing Tetris all day long while you're doing your game. It's just a different part of your brain.
yeah, yeah.
So
Well, there are a few companies that are a bit forward thinking who've started using gamification. So instead to ensure productivity, instead of saying, yeah, if you don't do your job, you're fired, they give game-like goals and how you advance in the company.
Yeah, yeah. I've been hearing some really good and really bad stories about that, especially from the Eastern markets. I've been hearing a lot of good
Ah,
stories about it in the Western markets, but in the Eastern markets, it's having like an opposite effect because
that's
we're more
interesting.
individually driven. So achieving our goals is something that we all seek to do on an individual level, but we understand that we need teamwork to do it. Whereas they approach
Mm,
it as a team is more important, right? And it's all about
yeah,
working with the person next to you, and your individual goals take the sidestep. So,
that's interesting. So
yeah,
someone sitting next to you who's a way higher level
uh-huh.
might drive you insane.
Exactly. Because
Yeah.
it's not really how you're supposed to be playing.
Mm,
So
interesting.
it's
I
kind of
also,
like we always seek something for a mutual goal for our own benefits from an individual benefit. Like you and I do this together because we share the same interests and we both
mm,
enjoy talking to each other. But if we didn't and we were in the same company, we'd avoid each other. Whereas there, they kind of set their personal feelings aside. So when you achieve your goal and I don't, it feels like a slight to me, and it feels like a
right.
slight to him because it's like saying you both worked on this project, you only get it. You know, fuck everybody else. You're the important one.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I can see that. I also like the idea that with virtual
This is why I went
reality,
to college.
it's served you well. I also like the idea that there wouldn't be movies and stuff per se
Yeah.
in the future because you like
It
I
all
feel
just
like
bleed in, right?
it would become a non-interactive video game
Exactly.
instead.
Yeah.
Um, and we're
Where
seeing the
it'd
roots
be,
of that with things like 3D cinema
yeah, I thought it
and
would be more like a play setting in my mind. It's almost like LARPing. Like if you guys were gonna
yeah.
go watch like a Midsummer Night Dream, you would be part of the crowd watching everything go
Mm.
down. Or if you were, in Deadpool, which I just went and saw, which was one of my questions, but we'll get to that next. You'd be somebody driving the car and you'd be like, "Oh God, whoa, look at that! That's amazing!"
Yeah.
And of course you wouldn't die. That'd be the
And
other
do you
thing.
think there'd still be actors?
Well, no, I think the acting would be like this. So they'd set up a world with all those characters, make them sentient, and then say, "Okay, you're in the car. You're perfectly immune. You're God." After the movie
Yeah.
ends, we wipe the world.
Yeah, yeah, like really. I mean, that's like sentient AI is an interesting one. That's like drifting into philosophical territory now. But
I don't
I
mind.
mean, they're estimating in I think the next 10 years or something, computers will reach the same computational speed of the human brain.
Mm,
Now that doesn't really mean that we can have sentient AI per
not really.
se.
No.
And to have sentient AI, we would have to question our own sentience.
Well,
Um,
yep. We probably are machines or something.
Well, we are. We're like biological machines, aren't we?
Well, yes, but I'm saying like we're probably part of some greater thing. Like it's unlikely that we're the first and then we're going to start the chain down. It's highly unlikely. It's probably more likely that we're somewhere in the middle or the lower end and we're just going
Mm.
to continue the chain. And then we're
At
going
the
to go.
same time, there's the infinite monkeys with a typewriter, or a typewriter with infinite amount of time. Eventually, the monkey will produce Shakespeare.
Exactly.
We don't know how long we've been, or the universe has been around before us. So,
Right. Humans could have come from multiple planets and we keep going back and forth and regression and we
yeah,
just kind of keep making the same footprints.
yeah, yeah,
Again, not to
absolutely.
relate it to Warhammer 40K, but that's exactly kind of what happened. The humans got really big, invented sentient machines, everything went to shit, then we did it all over again. You
That sounds about right. Yeah.
know?
Okay, so what do you think about?
Wait, my turn.
Go,
My
go,
turn. Did you see Deadpool yet?
okay,
Very
I
difficult
haven't. I
question.
haven't seen Deadpool.
It's amazing. It is
Is it good?
absolute. Dude, I thought that movie was 10 minutes long. It was like 2.5 hours. I literally, like, when the movie ended, I thought it had only been 10 minutes. It felt like
It's
watching a
crazy.
Netflix series that is so good that is
Yeah.
really short episodes because the way that they cut the scenes almost felt like an episode every time. And the
Mm,
character himself is so engrossing because they go from his future to his past to his present because he's just so insane all the
Yeah.
time that it's like when you look through the camera in his eyes, shit is just going crazy, and you're like, I can hardly tell what's happening here, but I like it. It's
Yeah.
like that photo you sent me where it's like, this is what it would be like if you're on LSD. And you're like,
Yeah,
you
yeah.
got it, Deadpool.
Ryan Reynolds is such a good casting choice.
And he breaks the walls in all the right way. Like
Yeah.
when they're making him, they're like, hey, you know, we're going to make you a superhero. He's like, don't make the costume green or animated. And they all look at him like, what the fuck's wrong with you? He's just like sweating blood. It was so good.
No, I really, really want to see. I want to see that. I want to see The Martian. I want to see The Revenant. I want to see
Ooh.
Suicide Squad.
Maybe not.
Sheer curiosity, to be honest. More
Yeah.
than actually.
I kind of think I might pirate that one. Don't ever steal things, kids. If you're one of my younger viewers listening to this, don't do that.
Yeah, no. Get someone older who knows how to use it.
Exactly, because you will get a shit ton of viruses.
Yeah.
We've all been there. Oh, I have a good story. I already told you this, but it's for the people.
Okay.
So I have a nephew. I like making him things. For Christmas this year, he's 6 now. We got him his first iPad, right? It was one of those things where it's not an iPad. It's like one of the Microsoft guys, the Android ones. It's a little bit cheaper, but one of those things where it's kind of like when you give your kid his first beer. You're like, just let him do his thing, right? He'll sip it, or he'll chug it, or he'll throw up, or he won't like it, whatever. Just have this, you play around with it. And he's like, oh, okay. And he went on, he found, he couldn't buy Minecraft because he spent his money on he spent his Christmas money on like a giant blow up thing. Kids do that. They buy like the biggest, dumbest shit. Like your little brother bought that giant gun. I think my nephew bought like a giant Tyrannosaurus Rex or something like that. But I didn't bother to look at it too much. He tried to show it to me, but it was kind of boring. That sounded so mean.
I don't care about you or your hobbies.
No, I like
child.
making him things. Like I made him that sword with him, and he was like, "Oh, cool!" And he swings it around with me and stuff. But you know, the kids are kids. You can take them in little doses, but it's good that there's somebody else's.
Fucking. Can we just pause it there for a second, man?
All right,
Coming.
all over my face.
Have you ever been called while you're masturbating and you having
Yes,
to shout
and
that
you say
coming
coming
coincides
while coming.
with, and you
Yeah.
feel like a bit of an exhibitionist?
Oh, it's really weird. Many times. See you later.
Hello, sorry about that.
It's no problem.
We can just cut
Yeah.
from
Yeah. What was I talking about?
talking about films. I know where to pick back up.
I was saying something about my nephew, right?
Yes.
What was I saying about my nephew?
He likes to swing stuff around, but just dumb kid stuff.
Oh, the thing, yeah.
by
So
stupid
anyways,
thing.
cut a long story short, he tried to download Minecraft, and he downloaded a pirated version. He broke the thing. Now he doesn't have the thing, and we had to throw the thing away. Like, we took it to the Best Buy that we got it from. They said, oh, you know, we could exchange it, and rada. But his mom, my sister, decided that it was a better idea just to trash the thing so that he'd learn a lesson about piracy. I was like, you evil lady. But yeah, it was a good time. I mean, I felt really bad, but at the same time, you always have that twinkling of get fucked, kid.
Yeah, that's what you get.
Yeah. But
No,
now he's very careful while he's on the internet. Like, he doesn't like typing comments or anything. He used to. Dude, kids have no filter when typing onto YouTube. Like, I remember I used to be so nervous about writing anything into YouTube, or like if somebody messaged me on Skype or something that I hadn't met like for or known for a long time, I'd be like, oh, you know,
nervous.
this is here forever, you know, that type of thing. Now I'm just like, you know, this helps me masturbate when I watch like, you know, a video of a puppy licking a dude's face or something like that.
Yeah. All kids are assholes. All of
They
them.
are.
They are all like the worst housemates ever. Oh, I ate all your shit and then like got diarrhea and left it all over the toilet seat. Bye.
You gotta love them. You gotta love them.
Are you up to something? I hope you're masturbating so I can walk in and make it awkward in the house for 2 weeks.
Has that happened to you?
Yeah. I was just like, "What are you doing? Get out!" With
You're
like,
lucky it's your brother. You're lucky. My sister's caught me masturbating on several occasions. My parents never did. My older sister used to. Because we'd come home from school at the same time on the same bus.
yeah,
So you'd be
yeah.
like, hey, I'm
Young,
going into the
younger
study
siblings,
alone.
younger siblings are the worst as well. They have
Why?
no like sense of,
Well, do you think he's started?
oh yeah, that's what makes it worse. I'm like, you should know better. But
Well,
he's got no shame. He walks around with his peanut hanging out like he doesn't.
what? He
He
doesn't.
walks around with his peanut just hanging out like he doesn't give a fuck if people see him naked, which is disturbing.
So he just walks around the house naked.
Yeah, he doesn't give a shit.
You know,
I will say you have company. Hi there. It's very refreshing. You know,
when I was younger, I was actually kind of the same way, to be honest. Now I actually put on pants like 99% of the time. Even when I'm just sitting here with recording with you, I have a shirt on, a jacket on, jeans, and shoes.
I was always like shy. I never walked around naked ever.
Really? Not even. I used to take my dog out like in fucking like the middle of Miami when it was hot as shit, just in my boxers, and I walk them up and down the street. Nobody gave a shit. I got stopped by
No,
a cop once or twice. He said, "What are you doing?"
never happened to me.
It's,
um,
it's hot out
but
there,
it's
man.
yeah, it's pretty cold here, so maybe there's a reason I didn't do it.
I'll tell you what, it is fantastic. I took my dog out for a walk 2 days ago. Yeah,
Mm.
I wasn't working 2 days ago. No, I was working a few days ago. Anyways, fucking, it was hot as shit, but it was nice and dry, and women were just walking around with nothing on, and it's like you know how a lot of people are weirded out when you get like an erection in public. I think
Yeah.
90% of the population that live in like kind of tropical cities with a lot of hot women, just they don't give a damn about it because everybody was walking around just eyeing each other up.
Really.
Oh yeah, it's the best.
To be fair, whenever I go on holiday,
Uh-huh.
I buy a new pair of sunglasses for that exact reason.
Oh yeah.
I don't give a fuck if my eyes burn out of my skull. I'm just doing it so I can look at women without looking like a creep. That's the only reason.
No,
I'm like,
if
which
the
sunglasses do you have with the most illegal ass tint on them?
You know,
Can I?
the difference is one. I found three huge things with this. If you're walking with another girl or have a couple of girls in the party that you're walking with, women don't give a shit if you look at them as much. At least I feel as though that's what happens. Two, if
Yeah.
you're really underdressed, they don't mind as much either, because you're not like in your full suit just eyeing up like a hot young 20-year-old while she's with her parents or something.
Yeah.
Or if you're with something that's adorable. So like when I'm with my nephew or something like that, they don't give a shit. When I'm with my dogs, they don't care as much. That type of thing. Because you're just like,
Yeah.
oh, bubby, don't
But if
go
you're
over
just like
there.
a lone,
Yeah.
if you're just like a lone
With like a
guy
bottle
walking
in a
around
brown
with
bag.
a fake mustache and tinted sunglasses,
That'd be
Hey, baby.
amazing. Hey, you want to buy some crack?
a trench coat but nothing else.
Yes.
Yeah,
In a
yeah.
better world.
A
What's
trench
your next
coat and running
question?
shoes. But completely unrelated. I was
Okay.
going to say, do you ever think we'll have decent-looking photorealistic games?
Oh yeah. Oh,
Because
yeah. I've shit on Alien Isolation a lot, but it looks pretty dang good.
it does look good, but I wouldn't call Alien Isolation photorealistic.
No, it's a little plasticky, and to be honest, I kind of like it a little plasticky because
That's my problem.
yeah, I like being able to differentiate the two really easily, and it helps you kind of pick things out that shouldn't be there. So like when you're playing Call of Duty or something, seeing somebody that moves really quick and like kind of stands out against kind of like the painted on environment, like that's what I'm supposed
Yeah.
to shoot right away. Whereas if
That's
everything
it.
looked exactly the same, it's like being in DayZ when you're in tall grass together and you're just blindly firing. It'd be terrifying.
I suppose the problem with photorealistic games is that even if the textures are photorealistic,
Right.
there's lots of other things to consider. A texture can be photorealistic, but that doesn't mean that there's translucence to the skin on a
Exactly.
skin texture.
It might
There
look
isn't-
weird it being photorealistic because everything around it could be photorealistic, but if your characters aren't, and if they don't move
Yeah.
in real ways and light hit them in the same way, it'll just feel jarring.
Okay. Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I agree. I think that photorealism as it stands isn't such a good thing.
No.
It can be, but you actually need a departure from reality. Otherwise, you end up in almost in an uncanny valley. But without the creepiness, it's more of an eyesore.
Mm, mm.
You know it's not real, but it sort of looks real, but it isn't, and it's not good. The reason I ask that is if we assume that humans aren't dead and 1,000 years there is video games.
Yeah.
If you have simulated violence that is
Right.
photorealistic,
Ah.
animated in a realistic way,
And you can
you see where
feel
I'm
it and
going?
smell it and hear it. Yeah.
Where, because there are people that complain about violent, like simulated
Yeah. Would
violence
that be
now.
kind of like a murder? Like if you and I are
Well,
both
that's
playing
it.
D&D together and we encounter another party and while they're sleeping we stab them to death and steal their shit. Is
Yeah.
that ooh.
Because the thing is, things like PTSD and stuff, I don't think it would cause that because the
I don't
hinge of
know,
all these
dude. Imagine
arguments.
you're right. Imagine that we are like right now just talking to each other like this in our own separate little realities, and we're back in like the Kim Jong Un scenario, right? We've paid for this server. There's 40 other people on the server. The rest of the population is 7 billion AI sentient.
Yeah,
And one of the other players, the only other ones that can kill us and knock us out, walk into your room right now and gun you down. I would feel a huge amount of anxiety. Like
I mean, look,
that'd be
it's.
scary as hell.
I'm gonna say that obviously you can't feel pain. I'm gonna say that's one
Well,
of the
I
rules.
think
You
that you
can't
would
feel the
feel
pain. You
pain. I
just,
think you would
you
feel
just.
pain until you die. And then once you die, or to a certain threshold, right? To stop people from torturing each other, right?
Well, I mean, these are still video games, so there's still got to
Exactly.
be a certain distinction from reality. My question is more: people now claim that video games fuck people up, and that argument often hinges on the idea that when a child plays a game, it's kind of programming them to kill. And that
Right.
hinges on the premise that they can't tell the difference between what happens in a game and what happens in reality.
Mm.
So if you blur those lines a bit more, where you're not feeling the pain, but when someone's head pops in a game, it is actually what it would look like, and their body falls in the way that it would actually fall. Um, will it desensitize them? Will it have an actual
Well, I'll
effect?
tell you right now, I feel pretty desensitized. But in reality, our ancestors were much more desensitized than we were. Like 2,000 years ago, a 14-year-old might club somebody to death and then go back to work on his farm.
Yeah,
Whereas here, a 14-year-old might shoot somebody at long range with a machine gun and they die. And sure, that can happen in real life, but that's a lot less traumatic than being right next to the guy, probably knowing him for your entire life because people didn't travel
yeah.
nearly as much, beating him to death, and then believing that some weird higher power is going to forgive you for it, or you're going
And
to go to hell.
actually, I would actually say that our armies in maybe 100 years would be far less desensitized than our armies 100 years in the past.
Oh, yeah.
Especially with drone technology, I mean, you can
Exactly.
set a machine to
One of
kill
my
mode
one of my
and make a
buddies is in the
copy.
Navy right now, and he pilots
Yeah,
underwater drones from his submarine. I'm like, "What's it
yeah.
like?" He's like, "Did you ever play Subnautica?" I'm like, "Yeah." He's like, "It's kind of like that, but not nearly as good looking." I was like, "Okay." He's like, "It's a
That's
bit like playing
interesting.
the helicopter game underwater." And I was like, "That's really
Yeah.
weird." So,
Because, I mean, if there was actual sentient AI, I'd probably feel pretty bad about killing it because it's sentient.
well, it depends. Like, let's say you and I have been playing it since we were kids. And, the first games we play are like, the Teletubby games or, the Barney games or something like that, where the other sentient AI are really nice and peaceful. And then as we grow up, we start hitting like the E10, then the teenage, and then the, rated M games. So we start out with the Barney guys. And we're like, oh, hey, kids, rada, rada, rada. And then the world starts to mutate when we start to want to be more violent and more sexual and that type of stuff. And then we view
Well,
them more as, well, I guess we just start to view them more as other people. You're right. Especially if we've been living in that one universe for a long time. But it's like
yeah,
Minecraft, right? Eventually you get sick of
because
anything, so we just
because
switch.
I don't think that if sentient AI was became a thing, I don't think you could have that exist without two major questions,
Right.
and that is how sentient are we actually? And if we create something in a virtual world that has our level of sentience, then we would have to question whether it deserves rights.
Well, that's something that I think would come down to each individual player. Because let's say that we join a game like Doom, where all the AI are sentient, but they're obviously evil. So we kill all the demons. We've programmed them to be evil, so we've set them up to fall.
But if they're sentient, they wouldn't be programmable in that way, or they'd be able to break their program.
They would, but we've predispositioned them. So we've set up the environment where they all live in hell, and the only thing that they can eat is each other. So, or us. So
honestly, I don't think I'd want to play that game. I'd be like,
well, that might be why we're in this world right now, where we don't have a lot of weird players running around with magical powers blowing shit up all the time, because they might feel the same way that we do now, where it's like, okay, I'm just going to be a billionaire, have a really ridiculously fun life, and then when I die here, it'll be like 0.1 second has gone on in my real time. So I'm just going to keep doing it for billions of years. Not even give a shit.
Yeah.
And then eventually they become so corrupt and weird, just like the Slaneshi dudes, that things would become more and more insane. If in 20 years there's pleasure cults and like nukes and shit going off, and you guys are listening to this, that's what's happened. The guy playing the game got bored, and he's like, all right, Armageddon DLC, let's do it.
Like SimCity.
Exactly.
Tornado, volcano, it's all
and
over.
Meteorites, all at the same time in West Wisconsin.
Yeah.
And a 2-mile radius. Then we know we have problems. Oh shit. All right, my next question for you is a little deep, but I feel like we've been going on a pretty good pace.
Okay.
If you had, or let's say that colonial exploration of different planets has opened up, right?
Sure.
But the only way you can get there is in a mafia type setting. So there's like one gardener, one builder, one scientist, one blah blah blah, one blah blah blah, a cook, and a murderer. And for whatever reason, you know that you're going to be on a ship with a murderer, but you guys are tasked with setting up the colony for the next for the next humans. How would you go about discovering, or would you even decide to go on the ship? Would you doom the ship to failure in order to try and protect yourselves and the others on the ship? Or would you somehow try and decipher who is meant to be the killer? So let's say like there's two governments and one's just like a spy, right?
Okay.
And you guys are pretty damn sure that, or you're 100% sure that there is a spy that is going to try and corrupt and kill everybody on your ship.
Honestly,
Yeah.
I wouldn't go on the ship.
You just say, nope, we're not
My
gonna
reasoning
do it. Uh-huh.
My reasoning is, though, in a mafia setting or werewolf or whatever, where it's a village, other people would be coming to the village. So if the cook dies and a new one will come. But
That's
if you're,
true. That's true.
like as soon as like half of those people are dead, like
You're fucked.
half the mission, you're fucked. Like,
I mean, especially if one of the really important guys die, like the construction guy. And you're like,
Yeah.
well, I
Or
can't
like the
go out
engineer.
onto Mars to fix this. I have no idea what I'm doing. You're like the
I'm a
dog with the
botanist.
science
I don't know
stickers.
how to make the oxygen come back. Like,
Yeah. No, dude, you're the cook. You're excellent.
here's the botanist has given up and is just growing weed. Like, there's no vegetables anymore. He's just growing weed.
Smoke weed every day.
He might actually be the spy then, because everybody else just quits too, and then they all die.
They all get stoned. The spy doesn't even bother killing anyone. They just sit around stoned. It's like, how's the colonization going? Dave's not here, man.
Yeah,
Oh,
I just
God.
really like those types of games and scenarios where it's
Yeah.
all about kind of like a strategy, kind of a horror suspense, kind of a real-time game.
Have you
I
ever
feel like
played
we
Dead
need-
Realm? You need
I've-
to get onto that game.
What is Dead Realm?
Dead Realm is... did you ever hear of Damned?
No.
Okay, so I'm going to give a little bit of a prefix here because I played both these games. Damned was a game developed by a country that doesn't really develop many games.
Uh-huh. North
Um,
Korea.
yes, North Korea. No, and basically the idea was you have a bunch of players in a setting. They have to find some keys and general things to make their way out of this hellish environment.
Mm.
And there is one player playing a monster, and the monster can set the monster. The monster can set traps in their ethereal form, and then they use the traps to figure out where those people
did
might
Nanners play some of this game? I think I may have seen it.
possibly.
All right.
Possibly. Now, I bought this game in alpha. I bought this for a bunch of friends of mine. I spent maybe 30 quid altogether on this game.
Oh, you silly bastard.
And they basically quit development. The problem was there wasn't another game on the market like it. So I sort of thought, well, the community will probably push to have this game become something. Like, it's such a good idea. But as so often is the case, when you risk money on an early alpha game, content crawled to a slow, bugs didn't get fixed, they stagnated. The community was extremely supportive, and eventually everyone gave up because it was just too much. And I put that game behind me with the single thought that this is a great game, I'd love to see a polished version of it. And then about 6 months later, Dead Realm came out. Dead Realm started off, I think there was a couple of different monsters you can be. There's a creepy little puppet ghost child thing, there's a butcher, and they all have their own little taunts and things you can use to shit the people up, and essentially it's a hide and seek. So you can have like 12 people hiding in vents and boxes and stuff.
Right.
They themselves use a mobile phone, and they use the static on the mobile phone to see how close the monster is. But depending on the monster, you can also hear the sound of the footsteps.
Uh-huh.
The monster can taunt to make people anywhere nearby maybe think about running, and then move away and see if they run away.
Right.
Try and catch them. As the monster catches and kills each person, they become a ghoul, and then they help the monster chase down the rest of the survivors.
Oh, I like that.
But there is a time limit. So it's nice because on Damned you would get out the game and then you'd have to wait till the game finished.
Yeah.
But on this you can carry on playing until the round is done. So everyone still gets to play, and it also doesn't feel as shitty when you get caught. It's like, you got me, right, let's kill the rest of them, It's fun.
Yeah, because then you're still participating in the game. Yeah.
That's it.
That's what I like.
It's a really fun game. You really need to get onto it if you have a chance. And they're constantly bringing out new maps and alternate game modes and different monsters and things like that. So it's really good. I can't recommend that game highly enough.
Okay.
But yeah, they're a good game for that sort of scenario.
All right. You ready for my next question then?
I am.
Oh wait, it's your turn, isn't it? I'm sorry.
It is my turn. It is my turn. But you can ask the next question.
Okay. This is completely off topic, but I thought it would be quite fun, and I need you to answer this seriously.
Okay.
So you,
Okay.
yes. Yeah. Let's say that you've met someone, male or female, this for our viewers, at a party or at something, and you find them online, and you're very interested in them. What would be the one line that you would use? You've got 100 characters. What would be the one line that you would use to try and pick them up? Or to let them know that you're interested? You didn't get to say, so you know that they're a real person. That's the only reason why you met them. But you didn't speak to them very often. You just said, hi, I'm Jake. She said, hi, I'm Susie, or whatever. And then you got swept away by the rest of the party. Yeah.
All right.
So you know that she's not a bot. That's the only reason I added that in.
Okay.
Yeah.
The problem is, if I was to answer this question seriously, I feel like my answer is actually going to be dull as fuck.
No. Well, mine was dull as fuck too. But hit me with yours.
I guess I would just be like, hey, I enjoyed meeting you. It's a real shame that I'm such a social butterfly and got taken away from you. Maybe I could get to know you better over a drink. Is that just...
No, actually, that was pretty much mine entirely. I was going to say... I was going to say, hey...
Oh, what's that? You're arguing with your boyfriend? Unzipped.
No, I was going to say, hey, had a great time at the party, saw you for a few minutes, thought you were really or you seemed interesting, you want to grab a coffee sometime. Something like that, just something really casual, and then balls in their court.
See, I'm comedy or making terrible jokes is my kind of self-defense mechanism. So I'd have to say something. Like I'd have to say something slightly dim
Right?
and off-putting. Like it would, I'd have to be like, sorry, I got pulled away. It was a bit of a shame, but what can I say? I am incredibly popular. Like it would be so off-putting. It'd be the worst thing to say, but I'd have to, just in case, like she's just not interested, and then I can be like, yeah, maybe it was that comment that I said, and not the fact, like I'd have to do that. But other than that, yeah, I'd try and be casual about it. Like I wouldn't want to.
Yeah.
I wouldn't refer to her as baby. And
Well, not until you
to winky faces and all that shit. No, you'd have to.
Yeah, I found that, though strangely enough, I think the super casual approach doesn't work as well as the pretty, like, I don't want to say forward, but yeah, I feel like the more forward approach works much better than the casual one. But I just feel like we're both too laid back for that type of thing.
I think that's the problem. I think is that when you walk into a room, the moment you lay eyes on each other, you know somewhere in your gut whether she's into you or not, and she knows instantly.
Yeah.
There's something. I don't know. The air
It's
changes.
like the chemical. Yeah. When you walk in and she stares at you for a moment longer or something like that. But it also is something where the more time you spend with some people, sometimes you just like them more. Like there's this really annoying girl, or I thought she was really annoying, that hangs out with my buddies and she was dating one of my friends, thought she was just like a real turd. Like she'd just poke me, she'd be loud, she'd talk during movies, that type of shit. Over time, I actually grew to like her. It's just like, you kind of get used to somebody's own insanity. And now when she pokes me, I just push her. Especially near the stairs.
Punch her in the fucking ear. Yeah. No, I agree. I think that there are some people that are like slow releasing pills. Like you don't quite get them until you've been around them for a while.
Yeah. Yeah, they're just their own brand of weird.
Yeah. I mean, I can see a line doing better in the sense if you're more forward with it, because then the girl doesn't question whether you actually like her or not, and you don't do that beating around the bush thing.
Right.
I personally still just, I don't know, I just want to talk to them like people. Which isn't me saying that someone who does the whole, hey baby, you want to... But I personally am more comfortable just talking to them like people. And I'm sure that I've missed out on getting laid loads of times because I've done it that way. And I don't mean it in a kind of, I would treat you with respect, so you should come to my house.
Like, how are you? What'd you think of the soccer game? It's just something that you talk with anybody about, but it doesn't really seem to get the same level of attention.
Because then they might be questioning, like, does he really like me? And I'm sure there are plenty of women that have thought that about me, kind of going, I'm not really sure if he actually likes me, and given up. I'm sure that has happened many times.
There was a very good moment, and again relating this back to an earlier question, in Deadpool, where he has a female that he's like, like torturing to try and get information, but he's like, do I hit you? Is it more sexist if I don't hit you? What am I supposed to do here? And then he goes, fuck it. In the end, he just shoots her in the head because that's what he did to everybody else. So I was like, it's kind of weird when you talk to somebody. It's almost like there's a weird etiquette to it where if you're super interested in someone, you should let them know pretty much off the bat. And I think that's the problem that a lot of guys run into, guys like us, I mean, is that you might be super interested in a girl, and you know it, but it's kind of like you're not that kind of guy who's like, yo, I saw you at the party, you're smoking, we fit each other, you're the other piece to my jigsaw. Let's make it happen.
That's my two-piece jigsaw.
Yeah, listen, it's a really dumb photo.
Yeah.
It's two stick people holding hands.
I think the problem is I've certainly gone, no, she just knows that I'm shy. But I'd made that as an assumption. So the chances are she's like, I thought you liked me, but I'm getting mixed signals, and I'm not going to just be, strung along and stuff. And so they will pull away.
Exactly.
Completely understandable. So I think you're probably right. I think, you should be a bit more forward, but then I've always got this thing of like, am I harassing them? Is that what I'm doing? Because I don't want to be that guy, you always see those videos. So it's usually on like WorldStar or some other fucking human trash heap, and there's some guy like, hey, girl, can I get your digits? and she's just trying to like walk in any direction that he's not. You know? And like in my head, I'm like, God, I hope I'm not being like that, you know. And it can actually cause you to go the other way. I met a girl yesterday, and you know when out the corner of your eye, you can swear they're looking you up and down.
Yeah.
You can swear they're checking you out, but like it's either not the right moment, or you know, I was with my boss in a very formal setting, and I was like, but you don't have the opportunity to do anything, so you just don't, you know. And sometimes you just have to be like, I'm just going to accept that as a boost to my self-esteem and carry on.
You're just like, yeah, I'll keep going with my day.
Yeah, I'm happy with that. I'm going to keep going. You know.
All right, that was a really strange tangent, but it's up to you now, buddy. Reel us back into our weird philosophical talks about nothing.
No. I was going to reel us back in, you know, back on Earth to do with video games, which is what we usually do. All my questions are about video games. I like the fact that you deviated, though. That's good. It's good. It's interesting.
Okay.
So, Nintendo. I was going to say about Nintendo's treatment of YouTubers in the last year.
Yeah.
And why it's illogical for most companies but Nintendo to do that.
Well, I think Nintendo are a bunch of dickheads in general, but I think it's because they're from a different culture and they're just not used to having their products criticized on an open market, especially before the product is out to the open market. And I feel as though they have a large pedigree that they need to kind of keep in check. So if they produce too much of any bad thing, that's really all they have going for them, and they don't really innovate as much as they probably should when it comes to new titles versus innovations in the same title.
Sure.
So,
Because certainly in the early 2000s, the best way to find out about Nintendo games was to buy the Nintendo magazine.
yeah, exactly.
There wasn't really any other way. Like the PC Gamer and the Xbox magazines, they dealt specifically with games on those platforms.
GameStop was a good way, but you guys don't have GameStop.
No, we don't. So, but I mean, I obviously Nintendo's treatment of YouTubers is illogical, because in most situations, a game development company, you know, having a YouTuber play your game is free advertising, and the more popular the YouTuber
Especially if you pay them. Then it's paid advertising.
Well, yeah, but you know, a lot of people are just
Sponsor
looking
us
for
at
something
the Black
to
Tie
feature.
Affair 117@gmail.com.
Yeah, I don't think that's worth it.
What,
so
you bastard?
A lot of games companies, they don't mind people doing that as long as it's not too negative, because people are looking for something. It's a symbiotic relationship. They want something to put out there. The game company wants their game to be put out there. It works. And I think the only reason, even though it could be all positive stuff and it could be nostalgia, like people playing through Wind Waker, then the only reason Nintendo are turning on them is actually because I think it's a money grab. I think it's a control on the market in case there's negative comments made, but also it means they can make more money. Whereas most companies will look at a YouTuber and say, wow, they've got 500,000 subscribers, that's a lot of people that potentially will see the game. Nintendo are going, they've got 500,000 subscribers, that's a lot of potential money to be made off our content.
Not only that, but that's 500,000 people that might just rather watch him play the game than buy it themselves.
Yeah, very good point.
Because there's quite a few games that I actually prefer to watch other people play than to play myself. Especially like the really high-end management and strategy games. I'm like, bitch, I have an 8-hour job. I don't got time for that. But
chances are,
watching
people
you
watching
play it,
someone play it.
uh-huh.
Yeah. But I mean, chances are, if you're watching someone play a Nintendo game, you might, and you're only watching them do that, it might be because you just don't have the game.
Exactly.
Or you don't have the console.
means. Right, you don't have the means to get the game either.
But you could say to your friend who does have it, hey, I was watching someone play, maybe you should consider getting this game. So I really think that logically, Nintendo should want people to play the game.
Until I see their paperwork, I'm going to leave that comment as no comment.
Yeah.
I'm the president.
Fair enough. But I will say, I think a big part of it is, you're right, you touched on culture. Japan, technologically, has always been quite insular. There's a lot of technology or variations on technology that have come to the UK and the US that Japan only has. So let's take the GameCube. when the GameCube was released, there was an alternate version of the GameCube that did have a DVD player,
Right.
which hugely affected the sales of the GameCube in the UK and the US.
Yes.
Because
May I ask you a very
had
quick question, by the way?
Yeah.
What is screaming in your background?
That's my brother. I'm seriously considering wrapping my fingers around his chicken neck until it cracks.
He sounds like he's having a great time. Anyways.
Yeah, soon he's going to have a great time flying out of the second floor window.
Sexy.
But you know, the DVD being on the PS2 really was what blew the GameCube out of the water in the West. But there was a DVD compatible GameCube released in Japan alongside, I think it was Nintendo working with Panasonic, that brought out this thing. It could also play music, and it actually looked like a hi-fi system, but it was a GameCube.
Awesome.
But only went out to Japan.
I see.
And the even weirder thing is that didn't even sell very well. The actual standard GameCube sold way better in Japan because
Strange.
the DVD player was already it wasn't as recent in Japan.
I see.
There's a
It's
sort of technological backwater towards the West.
Yeah, I've noticed that about a lot of their games too, because I'm a huge fan of Monster Hunter, and for whatever reason, they release better versions of Monster Hunter sooner in Japan than they do in the West. It's like you're never going to grow your audience if you're always giving them second shillings.
So it feels like technologically Japan is quite insular. You know, the market is quite self-contained, and as long as they have the Japanese market, they don't give a toss. and Japanese viewers...
Well, they're all going to be dead soon, so I think they better start figuring that out.
But yeah, it just doesn't feel like the Japanese viewers are going to give that much of a shit of what a YouTuber thinks. Because their approach to technology and the technology they have is ahead of what...
Do they have Japanese YouTube?
Well, Japanese, they have a Japanese version of everything. I mean, they don't even use Facebook that much in Japan. They have their own version.
Yeah, it's called Mimao.
Yeah, that's the one. Because I had Japanese friends who were constantly trying to get me onto it, but I couldn't even... Like, I didn't read Japanese well enough to actually even set the fucking profile up.
I'm so impressed that you even know one letter. Oh my god.
I know two of the alphabets, but the third alphabet is kanji. And it's like ridiculous. I'd learned it at uni, and it was like, yeah, do you know you need 2,000 to 3,000 Chinese characters to read a Japanese newspaper? And I went, collectively with my class, fuck that.
Yeah.
No, you know.
You know, this is actually going to give me a good question. Do you think we'll eventually have a universal language?
I think it's probably going to be a variation on American English.
Really?
Because American English
so easy to learn?
is the easier dialect of English to understand.
Uh-huh.
And English is the official language for air travel and stuff like that. Like, you can't work in anything to do with air travel unless you can speak English.
I see. Well, I think we really need to do this, though, because the less work we have to get for a language, for the most that we can get out of it, just the most efficient language that we can get, I think that's the one that we should all just start doing. Like, whether that be Spanish, English, Italian, probably not Chinese. just saying off the top of my head. But,
Well, yeah, I think China will dominate the economy globally, but I think in terms of a language that's more worldwide available, I think English has a lot more seeds.
Not only that, I just think it's easier to learn. I mean, there's only 24 characters. I mean, it's not really that hard to put a word together. In fact, most of our words are only like 3 to 4 letters. So...
Yeah. No, I think it's probably going to be English, and I say that not in a kind of English is the best, because it isn't. I'm not claiming that, but it just seems to be a worldwide thing. I mean, what was they were saying one of the largest spoken languages in the world is Esperanto. Well, I don't know anyone who speaks Esperanto.
Yeah, what is Esperanto anyways? Like, who invented it? Where did it come from?
Yeah, fuck knows. I don't know anything about it. I just constantly hear that Esperanto is a really wide language, and
it's probably some internet troll sent it to like his 80-year-old grandma, and then she said, like, put 10 likes on this or you'll die, and all of her other 80-year-old grandparents did the same thing.
Yeah.
And now there's a
And it's
dude in
like
Esperanto, like
how
Italy, and he's just having a great jerk off.
they tried to say that Klingon was going to be a big language because it was the fastest growing, and it was like, yeah, it was the fastest growing in the sense that a lot of Trekkie nerds went, oh wow, Klingon is a language now. I'm going to learn that shit. That'll get me laid. And then I imagine it tapered off.
Yeah.
It must like I don't think that it's going to be between Klingon and English in 1,000 years.
That would be amazing, though. I would definitely rather speak Klingon than English.
Crisscross, crisscross.
That'd be
Which apparently
amazing.
is Klingon for goodbye. I learnt that from Frasier.
All right,
But yeah.
Europe. Hit me with your last one of the day.
Okay, so Steam Greenlight.
Yeah.
Why do we think, or how does it happen, that there are so many shitty Greenlight games?
Okay.
How do we think a game concept or a game project falls on its arse so quickly when the initial concept is so good? And why is it, I think we've touched on this before, that if you organize Steam games by user rating, AAA games are often very mid-range. A lot of the highest rated games tend to be quite simplistic indie games with a reasonably high price point.
Well, I'm going to answer these all with one word: humans. Okay, let's work our way down the list. So, why do we think there's so many shitty Greenlight games out there? Because Steam doesn't want to pay the money in order to have a quality control. And what qualifies as a game is a very loose definition. A game is basically the moving of bars, or the attrition of mathematics in the background. So like a fighting game, for instance, is just all about getting his bar to 0 before your bar hits 0. It is literally just about bars. They're really open about that. So it doesn't really have a big core concept behind it. However, it's the obtaining of that bar to 0 that makes the game really fun. Now, a fighting game is considered one of the biggest grinding games in the world because you have no sense of player progression, there's no real change in mechanics, and there's no real change in the end game. So whether I choose Fighter A or Fighter B, I am going to have to bring Fighter A or Fighter B to 0. The more characters I have, just the more ways I have to grind. But everybody agrees that fighting games are games. You know, they're a very good genre of games. They're really fun to watch. They're really fun to play. They're great at parties. So when I create a game that's all about just bars getting to 0 or attaining some area of checkpoint, that's all that needs to be done. So if I make a really shitty game about a square that needs to get inside of another outlined square, like a puzzle game, in order to finish the game, that's technically a game by my standards. However, to you, it's broken, the voice acting is terrible, there's no music, the puzzles are really easy or just impossible. That's just the way that it is. But if Steam was to impose a whatever it's called, a system to kind of get rid of those guys, it would have to have either just an absolute crap ton of people playing it, who are trustworthy, who don't get burned out, who make logical decisions constantly, who are paid for this, and who are willing to do this for extended periods of time, monitoring their Greenlight system, and also would shut down a large market of people who actually pay them money to put their games onto Steam Greenlight, because it's not a free service. You do have to pay Steam in order to put your game on there. So if you put a piece of shit game up there that took you 2 hours and you pay Steam $100, it doesn't really matter to Steam because they make money from your game being sold and they make money from you putting your game up there. So answer 1, humans. Number 2.
Okay.
What was the second point again?
I was going to say, how do you think a decent game concept from an indie developer turns bad?
Yes, again, humans. So I used to work with a private capital firm who would give game developers money. What we'd often find is that the game developers would produce something exquisite within like the first 3 to 4 months. They were super passionate about their project. They'd say, you know what,
Yep.
just leave me the keys, I'll sleep here. And we would, and they'd sleep on the floors, they'd sleep on the couches, they'd sleep in the chairs, they'd eat like fucking animals. Like, there'd be trash everywhere, they'd be high all the time. One guy like shot a shotgun into a roof because he was just so high on cocaine while he was doing his programming and stuff. But, we were just like, all right, you do your things. And then afterwards, just like any artist, they get burned out and they leave the project half done. And you contractually obligate them to finish it up. And when they do finish it up, there's no life in it anymore. And things that look like they have a lot of polish just feel hollow on the underneath. The first initial voice acting might be like, hello there, my name's Rhaegar. And you're like, oh, fuck me. So then you have to get a third party in, and they do a shitty job. You have to pay out more money. It's ridiculous. All right. And the third point, why do we think AAA? Because people value the ideal of the individual more than the project of the many. So if one person makes a game that's pretty good, if you were to put them side by side and said that they were both made by one person, the AAA game would obviously look better, probably play better, have less bugs, and generally last longer.
I think we do raise the bar. We're like, well, this is a AAA game, so we expect more from it.
Well, that's the point, is that you get what you pay for, right? And since we pay both games $60, we shouldn't really rate them any different, whether it was by an indie developer or by a AAA title. But since we know what we paid for the AAA title had millions of dollars go into it, although our $60 is the same amount, we just expect it to be better. Whereas if the indie developer does it for $45, we value that $45 a lot less because we know it was made by one person and that the game itself was an experience for us to enjoy and more of a thought process of the individual, a passion of the individual versus the creation of a company or a machine.
See, I to be honest, I agree completely with everything you said, but there is one point
also,
I would like to...
work the shaft.
Work the shaft.
Cup the
Excellent
balls.
advice.
Good.
Wonderful advice. Use your pinky.
Don't use the pinky. I have a lot of hair.
Oh. There is one point I'd like to make, because I've always had to strike. I don't consider myself a Valve fanboy, because there are things that Valve have done that have annoyed me.
I like their
But
games.
there are not many things that Valve do that really disappoint me.
Exactly.
And so I generally trust Valve. Not blindly, but they have a good track record with me.
They're truly what it means to be the lesser of evil. They're almost like the true neutral of a D&D character.
And I genuinely believe when they release something, even that terrible charging for Games Workshop, online workshop stuff.
Did they actually
I believe that they proposed it and the community went, no! And then they apologized, wrote an apology letter and took it back.
Thank God.
But I still, even when they do shit like that, I still believe that they genuinely thought that was a nice idea to give modders extra money. I'm okay with what... I could see the logic.
It's like a you scratch my back, I scratch your back type thing.
Yeah, it doesn't feel like a cash grab when they do it. And to be fair, they had to swallow a pretty tough pill, and they wrote a genuine, like an A4 apology, and they explained why they thought it was a good idea and how they still want to do something like it, but they're going to revise the system.
Exactly.
With the Steam Greenlight, I remember before it came out saying that there was going to be hundreds of shit games. And actually, I'm surprised. It's maybe more like 50 shit games to each good one. But I think it was kind of a community responsibility to take on the Steam Greenlight. Like, we all knew. And I think Steam kind of sold it as the community is going to decide what's worth it and what isn't.
And you know what? We've done a pretty good job. Just being honest.
Yeah, I think community has. The problem is that Steam does need to intervene in only one situation. Because if there is a game that I would sit there and say is shit, and 90% of the people who review it say is shit, but there is a 10% cult following who like it.
Right, or are being paid.
whatever. It's the problem is that they may be individual gamers, and that games company may be paying them, but that's not a good business model,
No.
and that isn't really Steam's problem if they're being paid and it's a shit game. The time that I really feel that Steam needs to intervene is stuff like there was a space game, Kinetic Void.
Right.
I bought it in sale. I think it was a tenner. And they had all these great ideas, and they seemed to be updating it every few weeks. And it seemed like there was good content coming through. Now I left it for ages. I came back a year and a half later. The game had been released. Nothing had changed.
Oh.
And the game had been released.
Oui.
It is at this point that I feel that Steam needs to intervene and say, there are not enough people who like the game. There's no more content coming out for the game. We're not comfortable having this on, So because the problem is you could have 20 playtesters that say a game is shit, but there could be 30% of the community that likes it, and you're fucking with that community by removing it from the Steam servers.
Yeah.
Content coming out, there's the developer is abandoned when the game is abandonware. Steam needs to say, okay, we need to stop
no more
it
of
here.
that. No more of that.
Yeah, that's
And
every
that would
time.
help. That would help filter down the amount of people that they would need, of course, because you'd only need it at the end of a game's life cycle.
That's true, and they can put a notification saying, look, we noticed you have this game in your library. We're going to be removing it from the servers soon. So if you want to download it, here's a place to get it, or you have 2 weeks to download a copy and then just keep it on your system until you've had enough of it.
Right. And you can download the game from Steam, like now.
Most of the time, I don't want Steam to edit and cut things too much, because I think that Steam should be encouraging
let the people govern the people.
Yeah, active consumerism, responsible consumerism.
So you're saying America?
No, responsible consumerism.
One more time, run it by me. This time I want you to kind of like sing it. America. Could you do that for me?
No.
Well, that's why your your country's failing, buddy. Get shit on.
All my hate.
Okay.
But I do feel that AAA titles are underappreciated sometimes, because we look at them in a more analytical way, because we think to ourselves, that company, what, they're going to lose a little bit of money, it's a drop in the ocean. But it isn't the company. The thing that people need to remember is, if a game fails, it isn't that company that the blame gets pushed onto, it's the studio.
People. Yeah, it's the people that made the game.
Yeah, and so sometimes I feel like it must be tough when you're a guy who has spent a year and a half colouring in the backsides of the NPCs, or making boobs jiggle in just the right way, not because you want to, but
It's
because
your job.
that's what the people want.
Yeah.
And then people have a go, and sometimes I just feel like you either raise the criticism of indie developers up, still taking into account the size of the team, but you don't pull any punches. If this is a shit game, it's a shit game. It sometimes feels like with indie developers, people are pandering to them. Like, a bit of a stranger example, if an able-bodied person comes up to you and calls you a cunt, you will flip your shit. You will be like, you're a cunt, But if someone in a wheelchair does it, people are less willing to call them a cunt back because they're in a wheelchair.
Yeah.
Yes, they may have those disadvantages, but if they're calling you a cunt, they're acting like a cunt. If it walks like a cunt or doesn't walk like a cunt, it's call a duck. Stop pandering to them because they're indie developers, because then you get situations like that game we were talking about with the Jimquisition, where he was so sure that because he was an indie developer, he shouldn't be critiqued, he shouldn't be had a go at for his terrible decisions. Well, no, he should.
I agree 100%. Everything that you make, that you put to the public, can be judged by the public.
That's it. You can't sit there and go, oh, but I've had a hard time and I did. Well, if you thought the game wasn't good, don't put it up. I'm sorry. You may be learning. You may have had some family stuff, but that is not the consumer's responsibility. Here's a good bit of advice. Don't spend the money if you don't think you can make the game. The community will forgive you if you say, guys, I fucked up, we haven't used the money, I don't think I'm going to be able to put any more development on the game for 6 months. Have your money back. I believe, honestly, that there's probably a huge amount of the community that would say, you know what, hold on to it, and then start developing the game again when you're ready.
Yeah, it's kind of like what happened with Broken Age.
Yeah. What really gets my goat is when people kickstart a game.
Your goat?
It gets my goat.
Do you have one?
It gets my dander right up.
Oh,
What
not
really,
your dander!
not my dander.
What about your maypole? Do they put it in their butts?
What annoys me is when people get a Kickstarter, then it goes on to Greenlight.
Yeah.
I'm like, you agreed that this is the game that you would put out for this sum of money. The fact that you're then going onto the Greenlight and asking for money really distresses me.
On how they do it. Like if they go onto the Greenlight and everybody that's backed them gets the copy through Greenlight, and it's just like another form of advertising, I don't give a crap.
Yeah.
It's like, hey, we almost reached our Kickstarter goal. Everybody that paid in, here's your game. But we're not getting as much traffic to the game anymore because everybody that wanted to pay into it pretty much paid into it, that saw it. So we're gonna go here. Tell your friends, and then they say, okay, thanks for the game, and then they tell their friends. That I'm okay with because having worked with marketing a lot, I understand it is just heartbreaking to get fucked at the end of the day.
Yeah, and I mean, I'm going to bring up that Kinetic Void game again because in that particular instance, what had happened was that it started off as a team of 4, exactly as you described. 2 of them became disillusioned. Then it was just the designer and the programmer. Then the programmer left because he didn't think it was moving fast enough. And so what you had is the game designer, who was the lead developer, without any sort of ability to actually make the vision or whatever come true.
Just no support.
But all the money was spent.
Yep. It's the worst.
Is that a cash grab?
No. It's not, but it seems like one.
It very much seems like one, and so.
Or it feels like one to the consumer, even if the lead developer doesn't have any of the money that he apparently cash grabbed. It's like, look, I put all the money in, but
just nothing came out.
Right.
So I still think as a consumer, when you go into an early access like I did with Damned, I don't know exactly what went wrong there. I know that I felt, I've lost out, but it was my risk to take.
Now you know what it's like to be a private investor, buddy. This is pretty much what I went to school for.
Yeah. It happens, and if you think a game looks good and it doesn't pan out, don't let people treat you like shit for it. The fact is, you tried to support an upstart developer.
No,
there's nothing.
You are shit for making the wrong decision. That's how it works.
But Steam does need to take responsibility when a game is so obviously abandonware.
Of course,
and it's on there.
It's very important that we do get some type of control from. It's kind of like having a government. It's just important to have a few base laws and then let the people rule the people.
And misrepresentation. Misrepresentation is another one because...
Now, I do have my final question just before we reach the 6-hour mark.
Oh, shit, okay.
Okay. Speaking of Steam, and this is just 100% because I've been the guy that's always been off topic, and I feel like being off topic, when do you think we're going to see adult games on Steam or on the internet in general? So, what was that game called? Hatred? I think that was the most recent one. And that was a rated adult game. It was meant for murder, all that type of stuff. And yet we do not see those types of things on Steam.
Well, it's interesting you should say that, because I'm pretty sure, I'm just double checking now. Oh, it's not on there. There was a while, I'm absolutely certain I got Going Postal on Steam. Or Postal, Postal 2.
I've seen a lot of but they've all been slightly edited. So we know that Steam is willing to do the work when it comes to their sales, right? So Hatred, I believe, is still on Steam. It's just been slightly edited. And there's other adult games on Steam that have all been edited. They get rid of the blood, they get rid of the nudity, they get rid of the drinking. So it's either they've been contacted by the developers, which, obviously the developers are the ones doing the work on the end of the line. But when are we going to see just like in movies, how now we're starting to see more adult movies, more foreign
I
films
think
that show up in our theaters that you can watch after midnight. You know,
this
when
is
it gonna
one that
be-
you and I would have had a different experience on, though.
Yeah.
Because the copy of Postal 2 that I have on Steam is not edited.
Oh.
Now, I think it's somewhat to do with your country's laws.
Of course.
You know, so,
I've just been
Oh.
delivered vegetable sushi.
what's the game with the soldiers? Really good game about actual life in war.
Call
in
of
the
Duty.
In the UAE, where they go and he gets kind of, you know,
Yeah, Call of
post-traumatic.
Duty.
No, an actual game about actual war, not that fucking geeky, cock hardening violence fantasy that's Call of Duty. I'm talking about.
Modern Warfare. That's right.
I can't remember the name of the game. It's really going to
Battlefront?
piss me off now. But no. An actual. It's a story. It's got an actual story, a proper story, and it's good. And I cannot remember the name of it to save my life. I'm sure it comes to me soon. Anyway,
I know
obviously
what you're
that's
actually talking about, by the way.
yeah, that's banned in the UAE because Spec Ops: The Line. There we go. Spec Ops: The
Yay.
Line.
Call of Duty.
That was banned in the UAE. Now that has no representation of what the UAE is actually like. It's just using the UAE as an example. You know, of there's a war in the UAE. The UAE looks nothing fucking like that. We know that, but it was just a vehicle to tell a story. And some countries will ban games more or less harshly. I imagine the Australian version of many of these games is messed up. Often, if you look at games in Greenlight on Steam, you know, early access, they'll say, if you live in Australia, this will be removed on release of the full game. So maybe, I don't know, I haven't noticed much censorship in games, but we don't censor games as much here. We have done, but not as much.
Well, all right.
So I don't know.
I think that was a pretty good, roundabout, strange conversation that was worth it.
I feel like I've learnt so much.
I don't feel as though I've learned anything. I feel like I've talked and I feel tired. So I will wrap it up here, guys. Thanks for watching The Black Tie Affair. Check out Inanis' channel, The House of Buns, if you haven't already. And hopefully I'll beat this flu and go back to streaming on the weekends now.